That piece is unique to the extent that it represents something and that he laid it out so that the effects of the explosions would draw an image rather than create a set of spatial relationships. And what it is a variation in present day of Edward Hicks's Peaceable Kingdom, which are a series of primitive paintings made by an American 18th century painter, 19th century painter, of all the animals in perfect divine harmony, living together, the lion with the lamb. In this particular case, it is a whole group of animals gathered around one common watering hole. And it is a metaphor for the ecological situation which we are in, for the necessity of toleration and of living together for survival purposes. And it is part of a larger exhibition which ArtNet called one of the most refreshing and best exhibitions of the summer, if anybody got to see it. I hope people have seen it. I don't think it's going to travel. It's remarkable. For example, among the other things that were in it was a series of films taken of birds of paradise flashing their feathers in some of the most exotic ways you can think of, and yet it's about camouflage. It's about how physical beauty, how physical display is a form of protection. I think anybody who goes to parties dressed up probably knows that already. On the film coming home, I saw the Iris Apfel film, the last film that Albert Maisley made, and it's about a woman who made a lifetime of dressing up to protect herself. In any case, there are other things in it, some of them explicitly ecological. Among the most interesting are a series of soundscapes made by Bernie Krause, who is 77 years old and has recorded 15,000 types of living creatures. And he has combined these in varieties of different ways to create a kind of visual soundscape. And they've done it on the walls where you see the raising and lowering of levels as you would see them in a sound lab. And then you see the color tones of what the things actually are. And you hear whales and you hear all sorts of critters that I don't even know made noises. But they do. I hope they're not farting, but whatever they're doing, they're making some kind of an aquatic noise. And there are signs of life. It's worth mentioning that Bernie Krause, who's been doing this for many, many, many years, has noticed that the number of noises in jungles has diminished. And as we lose species, we lose a sort of vital noise that is the noise of the world. And that is what the show is really about. Now, I would just go back to Cai's contribution to this and say that Cai's contribution to this is another, if you will, parable of the same phenomenon. How is coexistence predicated on the actual scarcity of resources? If we can't just get along, to quote a famous statement made during civil strife in Los Angeles, if we can't get along, we will perish. We all know this. We are now facing around Europe, around this country, and all over the world, people who are absolutely adamant about the idea that we should keep ourselves segregated according to species, or race, or ethnicity. And that is doom, and we all know it. And yet, somehow or other, the arguments against that have not reached the people who are most afraid, actually, of being excluded from the world by somebody else, as a result of which they will be excluded from the world, as will everybody else, by this sort of massive paranoid behavior. Anyway, globalism is part of that context, right? What we do not want is a global power. What we do not want is a global regime. What we do not want is anything that generalizes difference away. What we want is difference that can tolerate other differences. And what this particular piece by Cai does is it emblematizes that idea.